Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Don't have a name for all this stuff just yet. The Serie season is obviously starting this weekend, and with me to kick it off from a betting perspective and not technically X's and O's, it is Nick Diani of the Kicks and Picks podcast. I've been on there multiple times. Santangelo has been on there multiple times. All your favorite Serie Twitter people have been on there, and other great betting people. If you're joining us from the betting verse, see my work on the Athletic or just all of Nick's stuff as well. We're glad you're here. Subscribe, like. I never say it at the start of the video, so sorry, Nick, before you get started.
It's all good.
Subscribe, like, all that stuff. We could use more of you guys upcoming in the season. Nick is probably the main person I know that bets, that I know, like, personally at this point, that you bet on a consistent basis on this league. I don't sometimes. I go absent for, like, months, but back in it. I mean, Exhibit A was last night with the Inter Miami game. You and Monica were talking about your bets you placed, and I was like, shit, man. Like, I went for a walk. I meant to place. So I was going to place on a Messi brace again, but fortunate enough, I did not. But first of all, how are you, and how excited are you for Serie to be back?
Dude, I'm great. Thank you so much, first and foremost, for having me on. And as you mentioned, probably our number one recurring guest on Kicks and Picks. So we appreciate you for sure.
That's so crazy because I can't even remember that last time. And it's with Scotty and
Steve.
Yeah, see, I got it right.
So
just want to get that out of the way, Steve.
Yeah, no, dude, pumped. I mean, you said it right. Serie A's back. I think we're all excited, whether we're just fans or whether we're looking to make a little money along the way. It's been a crazy couple of seasons, and I think we're in for more of the same. So excited to break this down with you.
Yeah, I think this is actually going to be the craziest. I think all the dynamics for every single team, all the storylines leading up to it. There isn't a team that made the top four or even a European spot from last season, Juve, quotation marks around that doesn't have a major storyline following them, an overhaul, or major pieces that were missing from the prior season. So, yeah, I guess we'll just get into the overall part of it. I think the landscape of it from a betting perspective and just an overall prediction, because we get beef with people who don't bet all the time on Twitter that don't really understand where you and I and others are coming from when we say Inter are the favorites for this title. Okay. Betting favorites. That's where everything comes from. Where do you think underdog comes from? All this stuff. Like, that's the terms and the philosophy that is used behind these, statements or, just tweeting out stats like I do. I like to tweet out the top four odds all the time. It's wide open. The bookies kind of look at it like that. Some places have Inter heavily favored. I know heavily might be a little bit of a strong word, but in my opinion, where the league is, I think 175 compared to Napoli's 250 is pretty substantial difference. What were your initial thoughts when seeing these odds? And again, these are from BetMGM.
Yeah, so I think you and I have been back and forth a lot. I'm in complete agreement with you. I think plus 175 is a low number for a league favorite. So they are a pretty heavy favorite from what I'm looking at. And listen, I think that's pretty well deserved. That's not saying that Inter is 100% going to win the league. That's not saying that they're my favorite team to win the league. That's saying that this is the most perfect example, of information coming together saying, hey, who should win the league? And it's Inter. Let's be honest. They had a phenomenal run last year to the Champions League final. They have a little bit of consistency with their coach, who's now been there for 3 or 4 years. And they have one of the best forwards in the league. They've reinforced themselves with, which was, already, in my opinion, the best midfield in Serie A. Why shouldn't they be favorites? They're not my favorite team. I like Napoli. Okay, that's not an argument.
Yeah, thank you for covering that part of it. Put it this way. I don't think Inter should be the favorites. Because I kind of find the reasoning behind Napoli being the second favorite not making sense for also Inter. You talk about the consistency with Simone Inzaghi. It is his third season there. Spalletti is gone and Rudy Garcia comes in. I think that's a massive downgrade. 100% agree with that. Kim missing, that's huge. I mean, even if Nathan from Brazil is going to be someone very good, we'll see. That remains to be seen. But to replace and have the best defender slotted back in there, to ask that to happen again is pretty crazy to me, especially someone coming from South America to Serie A. It's no disrespect. I'm not saying he can't be a great player. I'm just saying there's more question marks than what we saw from Kim, who was playing in Turkey. So with that, what I'm saying with Inter is they lose Onana, who is what we would say a top 3 to 5 goalkeeper at worst in Serie A. So
Definitely.
that's a huge loss. Sommer comes in, good replacement. Quadrado is added, Thuram is added. That scoring up top with Inter, that's a big loss with Lukaku. His second half,
Yep.
Lukaku, first half, Lukaku, we all saw, knew what happened. Inter, again, first half last season, disastrous. It was
Yep.
one of the worst Serie A Inter teams that we've seen in a very long time. The prior years with Inzaghi's first year and then the Conte teams combined with those losses that they had in the league did not equate to what they did last year. Their run to the Champions League final was indicative of that, in my opinion. Towards the second half, he could kind of fall off a little bit. There were 2 trophies there. I think they do deserve to be respected. I think Samardzic, that whole situation, kind
Disaster.
of it's crazy. I think it depends on a lot. I think if they added him, then that's a no-brainer best midfield. But with some of the moves that Napoli are about to make or might make, I mean, the Zelensky thing, I kind of toss it off to the side. I kind of don't view him as kind of the player that shifts everything like that. But listen, Nick, if Coop Miner somehow finds his way to Napoli, I think they win. There are my question marks. Obviously, I don't think it's repeatable of what they did last year. Victor Osimhen has some, injury history. There's
Always.
AFCON as well.
Yep.
I know that's something that you want to talk about. I'll let you get to that in a second. To me, I think certain people from certain fan bases kind of overstate losses of other clubs, but don't kind of look in the mirror of their own clubs. And I think if we really dissect every club this year, and yours included in Lazio, he's not a Milan fan, by the way. I think we could all point and say, like, okay, SMS is a huge loss. Tonali
Massive.
is a huge loss. Kim's a huge loss. Juve is Juve. I kind of don't trust them in general. There hasn't been a huge loss on a player. Maybe Di Maria is the biggest one. And then again, what we just talked about with these other 2 clubs, I have question marks for everyone. That's why it's wide open. So why not Napoli? Because I always
Yep.
found this interesting from your perspective.
Yeah. So I think before I even say that, you're exactly right. It is wide open. Everybody has deficiencies. There's almost not a bad bet if you're looking at the top 4 teams. If there's a team you like here to win the league, I don't think there's necessarily a bad number.
Okay.
But the reason I don't like Napoli is that African Cup of Nations. I think that they have a couple of key players that are going to be gone for that. So you're talking about missing 3, 4, potentially 5 matches. And players that come back from it, they're always a little bit spent. That performance in the second half of the season is never really as good as you would expect. And that's going to be a big hit for them. In the other, you mentioned Rudy Garcia. I think, this guy, he has 1 league title 10 years ago, 12 years ago with Lille. He hasn't done much. He was a disaster with Roma when he was in Serie A last.
Oh my goodness.
I think that's a massive downgrade. And quite honestly, I don't think they're catching anybody by surprise this year. I mean,
Well, it was a lot of career years for some of their players, and it's not to say that they're not great. It's kind of like the adjustment. And the interesting part that you mentioned too with the AFCON, Victor is like the main guy that we think of when it comes to that.
Yep.
He did not play in the World Cup last year. So like
There you
that
go.
mid-season tournament that was a factor for this season wasn't last year. And for quite a few teams in this league, there were a lot of really good players that were gone. Milan, I could only think of like perfect example of it is Teo Hernandez and Olivier Giroud as their main 2 play with the worst backups possible within the squad were the ones who went furthest into a mid-season tournament and had to also play every single game while going to a Champions League semifinal. I think you have a point there. The depth with Napoli, I think on paper, right? Like no one argues that to an extent. How much of a drop off do you kind of see with that defense there? Like they weren't awful without Kim at times, but they weren't necessarily this lockdown, juggernaut that it was.
They
with
started
Kim.
to falter a little in the second half of the year, but I think they stayed relatively healthy last year. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was that's a big factor. Injuries at some point in time are going to catch up to every team in this league. It's how you deal with it. And now without Kim there, that first injury, that potentially could happen. I don't know how they're coping compared to some of the other top teams.
Yeah, and I mean they're star players. I think their attacking depth is phenomenal. Maybe
Definitely.
Raspadori takes a that's the interesting thing. I think Raspadori under Spalletti was far better as an option in his outlook for his future because of just the way Spalletti is able to play with sort of he's not necessarily a false nine, but he has the attributes as one
Yeah.
of one, in which he's capable of being closer to goal and scoring a lot and being a good passer and a pretty good dribbler as well. With Garcia, I'm interested to see the plan with that. Their right side is still pretty weak, or a
Definitely.
lot of their fans are not the biggest fans of it. Di Lorenzo is a lockdown guy, but just moving on from them and to another light blue team, which is yours. You mentioned that you liked every other team's kind of numbers regarding the title. For me, I find Lazio to be the best value out of the top four teams. I don't think they're going to win the title again. This is something that we were talking about right before pre-show. Our favorite bet does not mean this is who we think is going to win the league.
Right.
The favorite bet is just what's going to win you the most amount of money that is also all in likelihood possible to
Possible.
happen. Like it's right. That's how you have to gauge it. Some people don't get it. If you're new to betting, that's okay. This is kind of why
Yeah.
we ramble in a sense and go off into detail on these things. So Lazio plus 1400. You and I have been adamant about it. Even some Roma fans have been this way too. And anyone who kind of watches these markets with Serie A, since Jose Mourinho has returned to the league, Roma get too much love. And it's
Yep.
happened once again. I understand some of the moves that they're making here. On paper, they kind of sound better than they actually are, in my opinion. So I just want to walk through this real quick. Roma's
Please.
plus 1100 to win the league. They have not won the league in over 2 decades. We saw how much they struggled with multiple competitions and it saw them slip up. Selling Ibanez was absolutely incredible for them. I thought it was highway robbery. And Dika's a good signing. Owar is a good signing. However, no Tammy Abraham. He struggled, and it's also a massive loss for the entire season now across multiple competitions. Belotti was straight up awful last year.
0 goals.
0 goals, which is just insane considering that Cairo turned down like 80 million and Mbaye Niang from Milan years back in 2017. Probably one of the worst non-accepted deals ever. But anyways, we're sort of looking at Zapata, Paredes, and Renato Sanchez. So last year, the big issue was with Roma were the injuries. They just signed 3 injury over the hill players. So where is this number coming from, Nick?
I don't know. They're scrambling to say the least, right? We've talked about it. Jose, third year. I mean, he has a conference league title, which listen, I'm not going to downplay that. I'm coming from a club that, hasn't won much in my lifetime. So anytime you can win a trophy, God bless them. I'm a little jealous, but they've gotten worse and worse in Serie A over the last 3 years or, 2 years since he took over. So where this number is coming from, I can't really make sense of it. You mentioned the Tammy injury. I think that's going to be worse than just about anything else for this team. I don't exactly know where the goals are coming
So many
from.
different reasons too. Like even on the transfer market, like if they wanted to move on, like who wants that now? Like it's
Right. Brutal. And they paid 40 for him, which after the first year when he had, I think, close to 20 goals seemed like a pretty good value. We can debate that another time, I guess.
No, I'll just say Conference League boosted that, but go ahead.
Sure. But now they're talking about Dybala's not even going to be fit for week 1, which should not come as a surprise to anybody that watches the league or watches Roma, right? So if he's only good for about 20 to 25 games, which seems to be his ceiling, I don't see how this team make a push for top 4. And that's not trying to be a hater. That's just looking at the squad
I
that's in
mean,
front of us.
the goalkeeper situation as well. We could even talk about that. Rui
Yep.
Patricio, like week in, week out, like talked about as the worst keeper out of all the top sides as a starter. I mean, it's not even a comparison at this point. And then just to stick to our family city here in Rome, like Lazio plus 1400. I understand where some of these numbers come from. I don't think they're going to win the league. I think it's the same thing almost every single year with Lazio. And I say this to Sean McIntosh and every other Lazio fan that I talk to is that I never have a problem with your starting 11. I have a problem with your manager and how your manager rotates within your squad and your squad depth. And that's just the thing. And the Immobile injuries are starting to creep up and catch up to him over the course of time. I still think he's worthy of, like we could check off 15 goals if he plays this proper amount of games with that. That's always invaluable in this league. You're going to be able to finish penalties with him. However, you did lose your best midfielder since Nedved. Is that fair to say, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head right now. That's a massive loss. You and I talked about Ravella, Pellegrini. Those were official today. So we saw
Yep.
Ravella with a
Good move.
scarf in the airport. So love that move. Probably going to take over that Jorginho type of role that we see in Sarri's system. What is your overall vibe? Because it's difficult now because I don't believe you guys have ever made back-to-back Champions League qualifications. I could be wrong on that. Or the past 10 years at the
I
very
was going to
least.
say, not that I remember recently.
Right? Yeah.
Listen, I think everything you said is absolutely correct. We're kidding ourselves if we're replacing SMS is an easy thing to do. Now, I think he had a down year last year. I think he was a little bit checked out. Watching him game in and game out, yeah,
You were big on that. Yeah, I remember.
he disappeared a lot. So, but replacing what he means to the team and replacing just like the thought of him in the midfield is going to be tough.
Yeah.
That being said, the money they got from that sale, they reinvested. That's not something we've seen this team do. It's probably the best market that they've had since Lotito took over, quite honestly, right? They've
Okay.
brought in guys that can play right away. They've brought in guys that have the room, love it, that have room to grow. They brought in guys that Sadi wants, and finally they brought in reinforcements like a backup to Chiro that actually is age appropriate, right? So I think they're all good moves. But Champions League is going to be the X factor because let's be honest, it's a competition that Lazio cannot win, right? If they have the perfect tournament, the best they can do is maybe the quarterfinals, right? They win a game and
Has to go really well with good draws and all that. Yeah.
So at what point does Sadi get pissed off about that? That's the question I have. Who is he rotating? Which players are getting drained from playing in this competition? It's great that we made it. It's great that we got the money for it, but it's almost a knock against this team in reality.
It is. And what I find as a bigger problem, or I think a bigger question mark, we always talk about adaptation to Sadi and his play. There is, like with the overall core within year 1 and year 2, we see that jump. But this many new players in a new system this late into the summer, which again, you get your moves over the line when you can. Things materialize at different times. That's just the way the market works, and especially for Italian teams. Do you worry a little bit with this adaptation period of a Rovella, who I think is a quality CDM in Serie A? I thought he did well at Monza. Thought he did well at Genoa when he was there as well as a teenager. Good signings, but are you slightly worried about the integration for someone like a Rovella? I know, again, Pellegrini has played with you guys prior, so it's not that big of an adjustment, but this is a key spot in this system.
Yeah, listen, I think it's going to take a little time. I think we're going to see the starting 11 to look as close as possible as it did last year. Kamada's probably the guy that starts and replaces SMS right away.
And who I forgot.
So
thank you.
He's been he was one of the earliest signings, maybe a month and a half ago. So he's probably the guy that gets to start. We're fortunate, though. I think the preseason's been decent. The first game is against Lecce. Just for that, this is a future show, but Lazio in at plus 105.
Yeah, go ahead. Hey, man,
plus 105. I think it's a good bet.
Yeah.
I just think Lecce is a candidate to go down. We'll get into that, but
sure.
If the schedule is favorable, we can start to integrate these guys. As quickly as possible. But listen, Champions League starts in like a month, so it's going to need to be quick.
Speaking of, we'll just talk about the two other teams that were within that Champions League qualification, one of them being my team in Milan, and then obviously Juventus. As we see, Tonali left Milan. The overhaul of the squad was pretty substantial, around 110 million euros spend. That's not the net number, but the overall number. Once again, 2 straight summers that Milan have spent the most money. Last summer, I mean, it was 50 million. So take as much of you want from that. Listen. Necessary for what they had to do. I've said this multiple times. There isn't going to be too much time spent from me on this. A lot of people, there's the majority of the people who say Milan are the best bet in terms of Scudetto are Milan fans. There's some that I've seen that do like Milan value that are not okay. Okay, so we'll get into that. Then go right ahead. Why do you think Milan are the best value then? No, like I'm genuinely curious on this. I think there's their deficiencies, but you go first.
Yeah. So again, not the likeliest pick to win the league. Not gun to my head. If I had to pick a Scudetto winner, it's not Milan, but they're currently at plus 400. I actually locked them in at plus 550 a couple weeks ago, so the number was great.
Okay.
I just
Okay.
think they're the best squad with the best number that has a realistic chance of winning the Scudetto. And but what Martino was getting at before is, our style, my style. If you're placing a futures bet, if you're looking to lock in money long term, and this is a 9-month season, right? 9-10 month season, you have to be getting something pretty good in return. And that number for me has to be plus 400, plus 500 or better. So to take Inter or Napoli, who might be a better bet to win, you can get plus 175 on a same game parlay or on some
Correct.
sort of
Correct.
market any week of the season. You don't need to do that for a future. That's my betting style. That's why I like Milan. I think they've reinforced in every position, from the midfield forward. I think that Musa is a sneaky good signing for them. I think Pulisic is, and this is not the Americans in us, but he's in
Sure.
a million times better situation than he was at
Environment,
Chelsea
yeah.
on that right side. Milan got rid of a lot of guys that didn't need to be on the team. So he gets minutes right away. And I think Leao, man, he's going to have one hell of a season. I think
First time
that
he has
he's
help.
so
Yeah,
if they
I get
can
it.
get 10 to 15 goals out of Giroud, um,
Yeah.
Okafor, I think, is
Yeah.
going to be a great addition. So if they start getting goals from their forwards, which is something I think they've largely been missing, even when they won the Scudetto,
Crazy. Yeah.
they could. I think they could pull it off. I honestly do.
Yeah, so like I think they're definitely the most fascinating team to kind of view. So for me, I'll talk about some of the deficiencies real quick because we've spent like 20 something minutes just on the overall part of this. Okay, so here's my thing. You mentioned the number. It is a pretty good number. It was around 500, 550. It's actually shrunk even more. This number where Juve is 375, Milan's 400, that's changed a little bit on BetMGM. That hasn't been that the entire summer. I think offensively, Milan are a completely new and dynamic team. This is the most talented offensive side that Milan have had since they had Zlatan, Robinho, Cassano, Pato, and I know I'm missing someone else from that team, but overall, that's the most talent that they've had. Inzaghi was there as well, but the older side. That's the point. So whenever we looked at Milan and watched Milan last season, Leao is always the biggest threat. And it was really easy to defend him. I know we talked about it multiple times. Everyone's talked about it. Now go deal with Chukwueze. Now go deal with Noah Okafor, who can actually press and run in behind defenders. Unlike Giroud, Giroud brings a lot of other great things. Pulisic, far better option. Even if his right wing position out of the front three spots that he plays, his worst spot is right wing, he's still better than Salamakers and Junior Macias.
No
So
doubt.
just get that out of the way. Samuel Chukwueze, same thing. We'll see what they do with the third striker option. I think, and this is always the fascinating thing with monitoring the market, right? The transfer market and the betting market. Because if you are able to realize who is a good journalist and what decisions would eventually make more sense for a club and are likely to happen, you could have the foresight to get a better number. My issue here with this is plus 400 might be good now. Talk to me after Milan's schedule the first 10 games because that's the fascinating thing in all of this. They're playing basically every top side within the first 10 matches. They don't have Benacer till February because if he goes to AFCON, that injury is massive. Does
Yeah.
Mike Magnan stay healthy? I think he'll stay healthy. I hope. So like having him throughout that entire season helps the defense. There's no true center defensive midfielder at this point in time. So that makes Tomori more prone. That makes Chow more prone. So for me, it's defensively with Milan not wanting to take them. Malik Chow, fantastic talent. I think he could be a really good player one day, but we always talk about how it takes forever for defenders to develop to the top level, right? Virgil van Dijk, Scotty will back us up on this. One of the best defenders the past 5 years. Nick, how long did it take him to get to that level? His late 20s. My age.
Yep.
I'm 28. It took him that long to get there. Chow's 21. This is his first full flight season in a starting top league. Okay. He was starting in the second division for Schalke in Germany. So this is a completely different monster when we're talking about we need you week in, week out. And then the third center back option right now, Simon Kier. You get one injury with all this schedule, it could go south fast. That's why I'm off on Milan for those reasons. Betting wise,
Fair.
though, say they get eliminated earlier from the Champions League. If I am a betting person, and Chukwueze would be going to AFCON as well as Nigerian. If you are a bet, and Pulisic would be to fill in. If you are a betting person, would you be? You are, but in general, would you be scared of Milan once a week? And that kind of pushes into the Juve side of things of why I like them and their odds because they're
Yep.
once a week. They always beat up and eat on those garbage small sides that we
Yep.
see because everybody remembers. Oh, look, Napoli beat Juve in this game. So and so team beat Juve. But you know what those teams do? They always lose to the bottom feeders.
Lazio is the prime example.
And that cost them for that time. And there was other reasons in the COVID year. But the reason why Juve always won was because they beat the garbage teams. Do you agree that like
Absolutely.
Juve with
And
this?
they're going to have the biggest chip on their shoulder, right? They have obviously what's going on with all of their scandals, the many scandals. We got Allegri, who is public enemy number one for whoever feels like it that week, and you got a guy in Vlahovic who maybe his self-worth is a little bit down, right? The fans don't want him, the
Yeah.
team doesn't want him. What's true? What's not? Is he going to Bayern? Is he going to the Saudi league? I think he's going to turn up in a big way. I think Chiesa being healthy from the start of the season, if he's truly healthy, is going to be massive. And like you said, playing once a week is just a massive, massive advantage. And they also are
With that
incredibly
type
good
of
at home.
system,
Yeah.
yeah, that type
So
of system that they have, it's still really defensive. Bonucci on his way out. I think it's a huge transitional year as well. My thing is, was Vlahovic really hurt, or was it the system? Um, we don't go too much off of preseason, but they were a lot more fluid in preseason than they were at all last season, and that to me was surprising. Fool's gold or no?
I think they'll be in the thick of things. I honestly do. I don't know that they could win the league, but I think they're definitely
I
top four
question
hunt.
I question them against the top sides because
Let's
we
see.
saw what happened when they were with it. I think the question marks for them are fair because the second Juve got scored on first, the odds of them dropping points were substantially high for a team that was in the race for the top four.
For sure.
And again, they have to stay healthy. The Pogba stuff. So moving on to top four now because we spent a healthy amount of time on the Scudetto. Top four odds, they kind of suck.
Yep.
Just straight up suck. Not going to beat around this for too long. As we could see, Inter, Napoli, not worth betting. Juve, definitely not worth betting. Milan, not really. Maybe the best value, but who wants to take that? Just go take both teams to score in some random game then. Roma, plus 110, awful. Lazio, plus 125, not bad, but not great. Not enough for me to take it. Atalanta, plus 250, probably
The
the
one.
one I like the most,
That's the one.
but not the one I'm taking. So you like it? You agree with me? Okay, so go with that. Let's discuss that.
Yeah, I think if you're playing a team here, I think they're the likeliest. I think that number is kind of fair. It could be a little higher. All right. I'd like it to be a little higher, but
Yeah.
I think they get back to form. It's interesting because while I was looking up this bet, they dropped a half a goal a game from 2 years ago to last year. They were averaging 2.3. They went down to 1.7. And that was a pretty massive drop off. But I think Lookman is the real deal. He had a great year last year. I
Phenomenal,
think bringing in Skamaka, and I'm having this debate currently where this is a guy who pretty much over the course of his career averages one goal maybe every 3 games, right? He's not super
yeah.
prolific in terms of his final numbers, but he's never had stability. He's never been on the same squad from one year to the next. I think coming into this situation after a really shitty year at West Ham is going to be great
Where
for
he
him.
wasn't even really that bad, to be honest with
He
you.
did
Like
really well in the conference league, right?
conference
I think
league,
he had 5
yeah.
or 6 goals,
And then he got
but
hurt.
maybe
Yeah.
but only like 3 in the league. So I think he's got a point to prove. I like what they're going to do. I think they just have to be better at home, and it's the weirdest thing where they're like substantially better away from home. But it reminds me of Napoli in the sense that this is the team coming in that has almost zero expectations. Where maybe people are clinging on to the Atalanta of 2 or 3 years ago. They haven't been that same team over the past 18 months, I would say.
4 of those key players dropped off offensively that were huge. I mean, Ilicic, Papu Gomez, Luis
Yep.
Muriel, and then, excuse me,
Zapata.
Zapata all
Yep.
fell off a cliff at that point.
So does Zapata stay go? I don't really know. But I think that this team is going to fly under the radar for a large portion of the season, and I think they're going to
Right.
make some noise in the back half. Just a hunch. And I wish that plus
Yeah.
250 was like plus 400, but we'll take what we can get.
Yeah, absolutely bizarre numbers when you look at stuff like that. Again, just search the market everywhere. It's a little different in certain places, but nothing drastic enough. Yeah, listen, 16 goals with Sassuolo that 1 year under De Zerbi for Scamacca. Again, non-penalties. I think the type of creation that they have at Atalanta in that system, I think he will thrive. I think you could chalk him up for at least 12 league goals for sure. And again, even on the West Ham side of thing, they were the most disappointing Premier League team aside from Chelsea last season. And again, you could go with Liverpool as well, but everybody knew that was transitional. Its expectations are a little different. But either way, I think that's good. Don't know about that CDK reclamation project that they're going to be working on. I mean, at that
Yeah,
point,
you were his biggest supporter for a long time.
I know, yeah, we'll go with that. No, I just think people were. I mean, the kid should have had. If you go on of like, I'll just say this, and this is like any player. I think if you critique him for missing chances and goals, then you should also critique his teammates for missing chances. And there was like
Definitely.
he should have had like 5, 6 assists. And so if you're looking at that, you're like 6 assists isn't that bad for a debutant season, but the confidence is at an all-time low. They essentially got rid of him at this point. The only way he returns if this loan is disastrous. So CDK's era at Milan is pretty much done.
I think it was
Man,
just
I don't
it's a
know
little
what
too
to
much
expect.
for him. It was too big of a leap, probably. And
Just Pioli's
he
kind of
was
sucks at the development, I think.
fair
Too.
enough.
I did
Fair enough.
just I don't know if you
Hey,
saw this by the way, just real quick, the Yassine Adley situation. This pisses me off so much. So now he likes Yassine Adley and he wants to play him as a regista, but now the management wants to get rid of him. So good thing everybody's on the same page there. But Nick and I are on the same page regarding that. Fiorentina, real quick, just a plus 800. Just bring them into this conversation. We like Italiano selling Cabral for that amount of money to Benfica. Pretty
good
good
business.
fee, I thought.
Yep.
Yeah, good business. Parisi, fantastic. One of the 5 best signings in Serie A, in my opinion. For that left back position, that was the perfect leap for him from Empoli. I will say Beltran from South America, one of the top rated talents down there. We'll see how that transitions. Because again, you can't replace what Vlahovic was, but man, was it a damn good season for them last year. I gotta say, Vincenzo Italiano did a good job getting them to a European final and making them competitive in Serie A. What more could you ask from Fiorentina? But plus 800, not really worth it, right?
I mean, I think the issue that team has is they don't play well against the top dogs. The teams that are above them or around them. That's
Unless
really
it's
their
Milan,
Achilles
yeah.
heel, right? So, I think they lost to Lazio, to Roma, to Napoli, to Inter, to all those teams last year,
Yeah.
and that's really what it's going to be a little too much to overcome. I do like the fact that they got rid of Cabral. I watched him a lot. I didn't think he was all that great. I don't think Jovic is any good up front. But they have guys that, and they seem to rotate a lot. I'll give Italiano that. But guys
Yeah.
like Castrovilli, guys like
Nico Gonzalez.
Gonzalez,
Amrabat.
they have players. They have
Yeah.
good talent. I love Saponata. I have a soft spot for him. He doesn't play every game. He gets in the cup every now and then. Comes in
Yeah.
like the 60th or
Scores
70th minute,
bangers. Yeah.
right? Not quick or anything like that, but that's the type of guy that a depth player like that is invaluable. So
Yeah.
I think they'll be fun to watch again, but I don't know that they're going to make any noise to get into the top four. It's just too much of an ask.
Yeah, and speaking of CDK, by the way, just made official by Atalanta, so that move is done and dusted.
There you go.
So again, best bet for the top four. Nick and I both like Atalanta. I'm necessarily not going to bite on any of them, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
But if
and
if you were to go with it,
this is one of those two. I think you can wait until second, third month of the season, halfway through the season. If they're creeping around that spot, this number is not going to change all that drastically. I don't think it will.
Yeah,
Just an
definitely.
opinion.
Definitely agree with that. Okay, so moving on to some of the other types of bets. Well, we don't. I'll pull up the numbers real quick. So relegation, not everywhere has it. They're on BetMGM, the substantial favorite to get relegated, which is just it is so insulting, but it's really like funny in the sense when you look at the other odds. Frosinone minus 400, coming in second. Lecce minus 145, one that you like. I'll let you get into that soon. Verona plus 115. Cagliari plus 115, Genoa plus 160. I actually don't like Genoa. I think they're actually going to stay up.
Agree.
They know how to shit house this league. If there's a team that knows how
Tough
to
place
shit
to
house,
play, man.
it was like tough to kill them off and get them out of Serie. I mean, it had to really be disastrous, and they're always a disaster. But anyways, plus 160 there. Then it takes a little drop off. Salernitana plus 300. But yeah, Frosinone, everyone pretty much has them down. The bookies, obviously. So which one of these bets that I kind of just mentioned would you kind of like?
Yeah, I'll give two opinions. I think team I think that has a decent likelihood of going down is Hellas Verona. Watched them a lot, faded them a lot last year. They were like the best team to bet against week in and week out. Their defense is awful. They're giving up 2-3 goals a game. They really couldn't get it done at any point in time. So I think plus 115 again, not something I would tie up in the future, but I think it's a fair number, and there's a decent shot that they get relegated. The one that I would say maybe has the most value here is Salernitana. I believe you said it was plus 300.
Correct. Yep.
I don't know that they go down. I don't think that they do. I think there are 3 worse teams than them, but that's a pretty good number. I don't
I
know.
mean,
It's just the one that jumped out to me.
Diaz got to be Do again, which is God.
Right.
Like
Right.
for the like, I mean, that was just to escape. Like they're like fucking Houdini the way they were escaping the drop the past 2 seasons. Just like you could not believe it. Like you thought it was surefire. Teams
Yep.
like that, I agree with you. Value is there, but we say value, and then we'll look in like late April and be like, shit. Like of course they're up.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I think gun to my head, right? Frosinone, I think Lecce, Hellas, those are the 3 that could go down.
Gotcha.
Cagliari, I don't really know who they brought up with them, or I'm not educated enough on what Cagliari is doing right now to make an assessment. But is it fair to say a team that just got promoted can get relegated? Absolutely. So, Salernitana seems to me like the one that maybe has the most value if you're chasing this bet.
So to wrap up for best bets, it's the last one and always one that is fun to bet in most leagues, but this one is really lacking value this year, and that's Capocannoniere, the Serie A top goal scorer award. If you do not follow the league, put it this way, Nick. It's Victor Lautaro, drop off Immobile, everybody else, good fucking luck. Okay, so we'll look at it. Victor's plus 150, Lautaro plus 200. Decent odds. Really not bad on Victor, to be honest with you. I think that's contingent on he doesn't take penalties. He also isn't going to be around for AFCON, and there is a little bit of an injury history there.
Yes.
But again, we could do that with all these players pretty much. Lautaro plus 200. I mean, Inter is good offensively. He's a pretty decent penalty taker, but man, Lautaro can go cold for a while, man, and he's just bizarre. He's very streaky like that. Ciro Immobile, I don't think he'll be playing enough to get that plus 600 number. I don't think he's going to be as prolific. Then these bets after are just not worth it, to be honest. I'll have one in mind, and I don't even see his name here, which is pretty crazy. So again, it goes Leao plus 1100, Berardi plus 1600, Arnautovic plus
This
2000.
is before the transfer, by the way.
Okay,
So
but either way,
before the transfer, yep.
Either way, Giroud, same number. Noah Okafor, same number. Both the Milan strikers. Buladia plus 3,000, plus 3,000 at Dybala. Retegui, Sanabria plus 4,000, Cavadas plus 4,000. I do not see our guy Gianluca Scamacca.
So I can tell you what they are because
go ahead, go for
I
it.
looked
Perfect.
it up. He's actually at plus 2,000. So
that's best value on the board. That's the best.
So,
that's the best value by far. And if I were to actually take something that's not Victor or Lautaro, I would actually take Gianluca Scamacca.
Yeah. So and just to make a quick comparison, I think the number for Erling Haaland in the Premier League to win top scorer was like minus 200 or before that first game.
Okay, so wait, so real quick before you do that, this okay, we have to do this for the Athletic, and I texted you this when it happened, and I texted my boss Danny because I was like, oh okay, this is before the first game Manchester City played. Haaland was sitting around like minus 135 at the top goal scorer in the Prem. I'm like, oh, jump on it, like Jesus is hurt. Like there's literally no one else in this league. The best goal scorers outside of that are just wingers, and then Holland bags two, De Bruyne's
By
out,
halftime.
and
Yep.
then it just shot up all the way like that. So yeah, I mean, again, that's just kind of where you're looking these days, and I'm sure Lewandowski's the favorite in La Liga.
Gotta be.
So
Haven't
I
looked
haven't
into
really
it.
checked there. I haven't checked Bundesliga's Harry Kane. I know that much. So again, actually, probably the best place to shop out of all the top leagues.
Yeah, no, I think so. I'm going to echo a lot of what you said. Listen, I think we can agree Osimhen is the best, most complete forward in the league, but for all the reasons you mentioned, this is not a playable number. I think Lautaro is as likely as him to win this award, but plus 200, I don't know. Don't love it. Immobile,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, listen, if you told me for sure he was playing 30 games this year, I think plus 600 is a great number. He's going to take
Yeah, I
every
agree.
penalty kick. He's won this like 4 out of the last 7 years. The history's there. He's a little too old, a little too fragile at this point. So where do
Yeah,
you go
we're
from there?
Champions League.
Berardi at plus 1600 is kind of okay if he stays at Sassuolo because he's taking every single set piece, every free kick, every penalty kick.
And like, okay, so say if he does go to Juve, so I think it's a fair question to ask. Do you jump on this now or do you revert back further? Because is he the penalty taker if he goes to Juve?
I don't know. And now that we're looking at this, I didn't see Vlahovic, which is kind of weird. Unless
Okay,
I'm just
yeah,
missing it.
that is true. Chiesa was there, and where I rattled it off. So
Yeah,
again,
so
these markets are very bizarre. If you can go and find something regarding that, I know in New York State we're not allowed to bet on stuff like that. I don't know.
so
It's
weird.
kind of
It's so weird.
it's so
Every state's
stupid.
different. So yeah,
It's bizarre. If you're watching in America, in America, that's how it goes. And if you don't, well, you learn something
yeah.
new every day.
So Berardi, I think could be okay. I agree. So I think Skamaka plus 2000 is okay. Retegi is actually down to plus 2000. So that's the guy I locked in when he was plus 3000, just
Okay.
because I think he is going to have to score 20 goals if Genoa has a shot to stay up. Listen,
Okay.
right. He was literally unknown before 6 months ago, right? To
Yeah.
most
When he
people
got
who
his
watch Serie A.
citizenship. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's be honest. That being said, if you've watched him, for Italy, if you watched him in Argentina, the guy has really good instincts. I think this is a good situation for him to be in. He's going to play and start every single game. He's looked good so far in preseason. He's looked good in the Coppa Italia. Um, I don't know that he's going to win the league, but of everybody that was plus 3000 or better, this is where I kind of just took a shot. So that is actually moved to plus 2000 with the transfer of Scamacca coming over to Serie A. So happy I got the best of the number. I hope it hits, but I think
It's a tough one.
some of those other guys could be a better bet at this point in time.
All right. Well, that pretty much wraps up the entire betting section of the show. But since our Serie A season has it's about to commence on Saturday, 11:30 a.m. Napoli Frosinone is the match to watch. I believe Empoli is the other game at that time. In classic Serie A fashion, do not have the champions play when they should play by themselves. Should have been a Friday game. I'm just saying, guys should change things up. But first, we'll do this, and then we'll go to the granddaddy of them all. We kind of alluded to this already. Don't do it in order because of the Scudetto winner prediction. So top four for me, I do just have the 4 minus Lazio. Let's see. I think Lazio, I really do think they can make it. I would not be shocked whatsoever. I think this is just contingent upon Juve playing once a week. And I think they have that advantage over Lazio at this point in time. That's why I have them, Milan, Napoli, and Inter. I think all these teams, you could argue, took a step back. We'll see with Milan. It's very weird, like, because they took a step back, obviously, last year. I don't think what Napoli did is absolutely repeatable because they're still a great team. They're still one of the favorites for a reason, but I think they're a lock for top four. Don't count me in on Roma. I don't think they're going to do that at all. They have to finish bottom of their group in Europa League and so on and so forth. Lazio and Atalanta are the two on the outside that I think could easily make it in, depending on certain circumstances. So your top four.
Yeah, so I don't have much to add to what you said. I think my top four prediction is exactly the same. I think the betting odds are that way for a reason. I hope that Juve is not too much to overcome, but I feel like like I said, they're going to have a huge chip on their shoulder and they're going to make some noise this year. I think it's Inter, Napoli, Juve, Milan in no particular order.
Okay. Well, now I'm going to need at least something in particular order for you. Um, I've wrestled with this one a bunch. And again, this is all recorded prior to the first match of the season and the transfer market ending. Obviously, things are subject to change when it comes to this. Say if Napoli get Timo Kumpminers, slam dunk, done and dusted, in my opinion. I do think Napoli repeat. I think the loss of Kim is huge. I do think the loss of Spalletti is also massive. The Victor, obviously missing that time come AFCON, is also another big loss, and Gisa as well. For me, it's just about the firepower that they have up front is still the best duo in the league. I do think that overall talent in that midfield and the offensive productivity, Simeone, Raspadori, um, I think they're just too loaded up front. They know what it takes now, and I think that's kind of invaluable for a club like Napoli. I think they have that belief instilled in them. Inter, too much of a wild card. Milan, too much of a wild card, and Juve. I know betting wise, I've said it in the past that they have a really good chance for it, but just straight up prediction wise, I don't think I can go anywhere else but Napoli at the moment.
No, I think that's fair. Listen, we went over it at the top of the show. I think we gave all the reasons why Napoli can't win it. I Let me say personally, I would like to see them repeat. I'm not a Napoli fan, but I think it's good for the league. I think that if they could build a little continuity there, it'd be really cool to see. But I think they're also going to have some other priorities. They now have been through a Champions League. They know what it takes to maybe make it a little bit further. I think they'd like to add a Coppa Italia to their silverware chest where they were like inexplicably knocked out to Cremonese last year, right? So I think they're going to have bigger priorities. Not to say that the league is not a priority, but I just think Inter is too good. I think they're the best team. I think their midfield is absolutely world class, and
defense doesn't worry you enough.
You know what? I think it's going to be a little bit better than last year. I think Sommer's a good addition, and I think Bastoni is going to have like one of those badass, like, yeah, let me prove it to the world why this is why I got all this hype. And I think he can do that. And I think they're going to be improved from last year defensively.
Got it. All right. Well, you have Inter for Nick, Napoli for me. And again, I would not be surprised if it's another team out of those two. It's just that type of league. Yeah. It's that crazy. I think this is value, forget betting value just to like watching week in, week out. I'm not biased when I say this is the best league. It just shoots itself in the foot in terms of marketability. But if you're interested in betting and talking about other leagues, Nick, your podcast with Scotty and Steve is probably the best place to go that I know of for betting wise across all top leagues. I know you guys do other leagues as well. Definitely been in on the Leagues Cup with Messi and Inter Miami. It's been really funny to see people jump in on these stuff lately. But yeah, just plug everything there where people can follow you. I've had it at Nick Diani the entire time, same with Kicks and Picks. So go for it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And as Martino said, man, we put out weekly episodes. At the very least, we're covering mostly Serie A, a lot of EPL as well. We do venture out to the other leagues, but we've just like to break down the games, have some guests on, have some fun, and we give our three best bets every single week. So did really, really well last year. We were crushing up until the World Cup. We cooled off, I would say, considerably after that, but finished the season, I want to say, up like 15 units as a group, which I thought was really, really good. And
I mean, yeah, with 3 different fucking people betting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
and again, like first of all, one of the hardest betting years ever, in terms of just like what to expect. You had the biggest tournament in the world in the middle of the season after multiple condensed scheduled seasons,
yeah.
um, the years prior. So like again, like people like just jumping in and again, numbers are wildly different over here in the states. Like I don't know how many. It always happens. It just like I guess like a fun little note heading into the season, guys. Goal scorer markets every time. I know I sound like a fucking broken record with you every time, but it is genuinely shocking the numbers that you could see in Serie A with the scoring. Like again, Marco Lasetic. For most of you, just hearing that name right now, you probably have no idea who the hell that is. However, he was one of the top players week in, week out to score a goal for Milan despite never getting a start. So that's the type of stuff that you could take the advantage of this upcoming season. I will say one of my favorite players that you could bet on more often than not is Sakani of your Lazio. I
Yeah.
think he's always just somebody, if you really want to look into that assist or goal market, that's someone there who is, now I just thought of it off the top of my head real quick, someone that you love betting as an individual player in Serie A.
Orsolini for Bologna was really. And listen, my favorite player in the league. I'm a little bit biased. I love the guy, but there was a stretch between like January and March where I want to say he scored almost like I don't know, like 8 out of 10 games or something like that. Started taking the penalty kicks. Was taking a lot of free kicks. He was a guy where if you can get a to score or assist number when he was starting, he was awesome. So I think kind of that dynamic winger position as is Zakanyi, you can get a lot of value on a player out of that position because it's always going to be priced better than like a natural forward or a number 9. So I think what Martino was saying, what's really important is to number 1, check lineups. I'm guilty of locking in bets super early in the week, right? Like I have bets already locked in for this weekend, and you're taking a big risk by doing that. But if you're looking to
Yes.
play the goal scorer market or assists or anything like that, make sure your player's starting. So that's
You got to
super,
do it
super
like
important.
15 minutes prior is the best suggestion, honestly. Like it's just
Definitely.
it's so difficult because not every team releases like their lineup at the same time. It's just very odd.
Yeah.
So again, please don't bet on Orsolini this week because they play Milan. He does have 1 year left on his contract. Absolutely bizarre how much they were holding out for him. We'll see what happens. Maybe Lazio land him on a free next year. Would
Oh
not be
man,
shocked
I
if
was hoping he
something like
came this
that.
year,
Yeah,
but
I still don't. Well, Isaacson is the player that you guys got for that. So we'll see again as well how they adjust to it. Nick, I appreciate you coming on for this episode. We'll be talking throughout the season as well. We'll see some stuff with Lazio. Look forward to my betting preview with the Athletic that comes out Thursday tomorrow. This was recorded on Wednesday. This will be going up as soon as I edit the part where Nick disappeared. So once I do that, then we'll get to everything. We really appreciate all the support. Again, like, subscribe, comment on the video on who your best bet is for this season,
please.
who you think's going to win Serie A. Go and follow Nick, Scotty, and Steve and Kicks and Picks Pods on there. Again, sign up, listen to their podcasts and all that. Again, I don't, and again, they post their picks, so you can comment them if you think they're wrong. Don't actually do
Absolutely.
that because it's a toxic fucking environment with betting. And so again, just be nice. And again, plus 15. What are you guys up so far? You guys had a great weekend to start, didn't you?
I fell off a little bit on Liverpool team total crushed me, but we were fine. We one push.
We did we did it. I think Scotty did the same thing. I think we all 3 of us were just like, yeah, they burned us last year, but that's last year. And then we go in this. Oh my god,
100%. No, we did finish upper unit. So we started off the season with a winning week, which we always want to do. Our picks are locked in already. Episodes up for this week. So you could,
perfect.
catch that wherever you download your podcasts or we
Listen to
just
it right
started
after
the
this.
YouTube channel. I
Oh,
would love
okay.
it. We just started the YouTube channel where we're just posting the picks portion of our episode,
Perfect.
right? We do a full episode with games, breakdowns, guests, things like that, which you're more than welcome to listen to. But if you're just looking for the picks and the analysis on the picks, you can find that on YouTube as well.
Yeah. Definitely great. Something that you go and look at. Nicholas Jackson committed a penalty, and I want my money back. Other than that, thank you guys so much for listening. So we'll see you next time.
Thank you.